The contractions hit me like freight trains, sharp, relentless, 10 minutes apart. As I stood in the marble foyer of the Hendersons' mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, my hands clutched my swollen belly while Victoria Henderson, my husband's mistress, stared at me with those cold blue eyes from the top of the grand staircase. "Get out," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You don't belong here." My water hadn't broken yet, but I knew it would. Any minute now. I could feel my daughter dropping lower, the pressure unbearable. I had nowhere else to go. My husband Marcus had thrown me out of our apartment 3 days ago, changed the locks, and moved Victoria in before my clothes were even cold. "Please," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I just need to call an ambulance. The baby—" "I don't care about your bastard," Victoria sneered, descending the stairs in her silk robe. My silk robe, the one Marcus bought me for our anniversary. "My parents' house is not a charity ward for discarded wives." That's when I felt it. The warm gush of fluid running down my legs, pooling on their pristine marble floor. My water had broken, and Victoria Henderson's face went from contempt to horror as she realized what was happening in her parents' entryway. But here's what she didn't know, what none of them knew. Victoria's father, Senator Richard Henderson, was more than just a powerful politician. He was my godfather, the man who had walked me down the aisle when my own father couldn't, the man who had no idea his daughter was the woman destroying his goddaughter's marriage. And I had just sent him a text message with my location. "Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you about the perfect marriage that became a perfect nightmare, and how the woman who thought she'd won everything was about to lose it all." Before I continue, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. 6 months ago, I thought I had everything. Marcus Chen, my husband of 3 years, was everything a woman could want. Handsome, successful, attentive. He was a senior associate at Morrison & Blake, one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms, pulling in close to $300,000 a year. I was a junior editor at Whitmore Publishing, making a modest $60,000, but Marcus always said my career mattered just as much as his. Our apartment in Tribeca wasn't huge, but it was ours. Exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson, a kitchen where Marcus would cook me elaborate dinners on Friday nights. He'd pour me wine, before I got pregnant, of course, and we'd talk about our future, the house in Westchester we'd buy, the children we'd have, the life we were building together. "You're going to be an amazing mother," he'd tell me, his hand resting on my still flat stomach in those early weeks of pregnancy. "Our daughter is so lucky to have you." I believed him. God, I believed every word. Marcus had introduced me to the Hendersons at a firm party 2 years into our marriage. Senator Richard Henderson was a client, and his wife Patricia was on the board of half the charities in Connecticut. They were American royalty, old money, political power, the kind of family that appeared in Town and Country magazine. What I didn't tell Marcus, what I'd never mentioned to anyone at that party, was that Richard Henderson already knew me. He'd been my father's college roommate, his best friend for 40 years. When my father died of a heart attack 2 weeks before my wedding, Richard had stepped in without hesitation. "Your father would want me here," he'd said, his voice thick with emotion as he took my arm. "You're like a daughter to me, Sophia. Always have been." I'd kept our relationship quiet because Richard was a very private man about his personal life, and I respected that. But that night at the firm party, when Marcus introduced us, Richard's eyes had lit up with genuine joy. "Sophia! My dear girl, I had no idea you worked with Marcus's firm." He'd embraced me warmly, and I could see Marcus's face. The surprise, the dawning realization that his wife had connections he hadn't known about. That should have been my first warning sign. The way Marcus's expression changed from surprise to calculation in a heartbeat. The way he suddenly became more interested in the Hendersons, suggesting we have dinner with them, accepting every invitation to their Connecticut estate. But I'd been too naive to see it, too trusting. The Hendersons had one daughter, Victoria, 25 years old, blonde, beautiful, with a trust fund the size of a small country's GDP. She'd studied art history at Yale, traveled the world, and had never worked a day in her life because she'd never had to. She collected men the way some people collected stamps, easily, frequently, and without much attachment. I'd met her a handful of times at Henderson family events. She'd been polite but distant, the way rich girls often are with women they consider beneath them. I didn't mind. I had Marcus, I had my career, and I was happy. But I should have noticed the changes. It started about 8 months ago, right after I told Marcus I was pregnant. At first, he seemed thrilled. He'd picked me up, spun me around, kissed me breathless. But then slowly, things shifted. The late nights at the office became more frequent. "Big case," he'd say, kissing my forehead as he grabbed his briefcase at 7 a.m. and didn't return until midnight. "Morrison's riding me hard. I have to make partner soap. For us, for the baby." I understood. Or I thought I did. The pressure of providing for a growing family, the weight of responsibility. So I said nothing when he missed our 20-week ultrasound, nothing when he forgot our anniversary, nothing when he started sleeping in the guest room because my pregnancy snoring kept him awake. "You need your rest," he'd say, so considerate. "And I need to be sharp for work. It's just temporary, baby." The flowers stopped coming. The Friday night dinners disappeared. The gentle hand on my growing belly became less and less frequent, but I told myself it was normal. Marriage isn't always romance. Real life intrudes. Stress happens. What I didn't see was the real picture, the one where my husband was slowly, methodically erasing me from his life, creating distance, building a wall, preparing to replace me. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning in October. I was 7 months pregnant, my belly huge, my back aching constantly. I'd taken the day off because of a doctor's appointment, routine checkup, nothing serious, and I'd decided to surprise Marcus with lunch at his office. I'd made his favorite, chicken Penang curry from the Thai place on Mott Street. I wore a loose maternity dress that didn't completely hide how enormous I'd gotten, but I didn't care. I was happy. The doctor had said our daughter was healthy and growing perfectly. I wanted to share that joy with my husband. The receptionist at Morrison and Blake knew me. "Mrs. Chen, how lovely to see you. Let me buzz Marcus." But before she could pick up the phone, I heard voices from the hallway. Marcus's voice, and a woman's laugh. Light, flirtatious, familiar. They rounded the corner together. Marcus, in his perfectly tailored Armani suit, his hand resting casually, too casually, on the small of her back. And Victoria Henderson, dressed in a Chanel suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her blonde hair perfectly styled, looking up at Marcus with open adoration. They didn't see me at first. They were too absorbed in each other. "You're terrible," Victoria was saying, playfully swatting his arm. "Absolutely terrible. When my father finds out you talked him into that settlement." "Your father," Marcus said, his voice warm, intimate, "is going to thank me. And so are you, once I take you to Le Bernardin to celebrate." "Marcus Chen, are you asking me out to dinner?" That's when they saw me, standing there, holding a bag of Thai food, 7 months pregnant with his child. The color drained from Marcus's face. Victoria's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered, her expression shifting to something that looked almost like pity. "Sophia," Marcus said, his voice tight. "What are you doing here?" "I brought you lunch." My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. "I thought we could eat together." There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Marcus glanced at Victoria, then back at me. That's really thoughtful, but I actually have a working lunch scheduled. With Victoria, about her father's case." "Oh," I looked at Victoria. "I didn't realize you worked here." "I don't," she said smoothly. "I'm just helping my father with some details. Marcus has been absolutely invaluable." The way she said his name, the way she looked at him, the way his hand had been resting on her back. My intuition screamed, but my love for my husband, my trust in him, my desperate need to believe in our marriage, it all pushed that intuition down. "Well," I said, forcing a smile, "I'll just leave this here for later then. It's your favorite." I set the bag down on the receptionist's desk and turned to leave. As I walked away, I heard Victoria's voice, low but not quite low enough. "She's so sweet, poor thing." Poor thing. Those 2 words haunted me all the way home, but still I didn't understand. I didn't see. I was about to find out just how blind I'd been. That night, Marcus came home at 11 p.m. I was still awake, lying in our bed, my bed now since he'd moved to the guest room, staring at the ceiling. The curry sat untouched in our refrigerator. When I'd called his office at 2 p.m., the receptionist said he'd left for a client meeting. I'd called his cell 6 times. Every call went to voicemail. He slipped into the bedroom quietly, probably thinking I was asleep. When he saw my eyes open in the darkness, he jumped slightly. "Jesus, Soph, you scared me." "Where were you?" He sighed, loosening his tie. "I told you. Working lunch. Then it turned into a working dinner. The Henderson case is massive, and Richard wants updates constantly." Was Victoria there? The question hung in the air. In the dim light from the street, I watched his face carefully. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. Of course, it's her father's case. She's our liaison. So reasonable, so logical. And yet, Marcus, are you having an affair with Victoria Henderson? I hadn't planned to ask. The words just exploded out of me, raw and desperate. And for one split second, just one, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, panic. But then it was gone, replaced by hurt and indignation. Are you serious right now? He laughed, but it sounded wrong. Sophia, you're being paranoid. Victoria's a client's daughter, that's it. Then why did she call me a poor thing today? What? When? After I left your office, I heard her. He sat down on the bed beside me, his hand reaching for mine. Baby, listen to me. Victoria can be condescending. You know how rich people are. She probably meant it in a patronizing way, not a malicious one. You're reading into things because you're stressed and pregnant and— Don't, I pulled my hand away. Don't make this about pregnancy hormones. I'm not. I'm just saying you're under a lot of stress. And so am I. This case could make me partner, Soph. Partner. That's everything we've been working toward. More money, more security, for our family. He was good. So good. He'd learned all the right words to say, all the right buttons to push. And despite the alarm bells ringing in my head, I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. I'm sorry, I whispered. You're right. I'm just scared and tired. I know, baby. He kissed my forehead, stood up. Get some sleep. Things will look better in the morning. But he didn't climb into bed with me. He went back to the guest room, closing the door quietly behind him. Things didn't look better in the morning. They looked worse. I waited until Marcus left for work at 7 a.m. Then I did something I'd never done before. I checked his credit card statements. Marcus handled most of our finances. He made more money, and I'd been happy to let him take care of it. We had a joint account for household expenses, but he had his own cards for work expenses that I never questioned. I questioned them now. His laptop was in his home office. The password was our anniversary date, or at least it had been. When I typed it in, I got an error message. He'd changed it. My heart sank. But then I remembered. We had online banking. Same username, same password. Maybe he'd been lazy about changing that one. He had. I logged in and pulled up the last 3 months of statements. At first, nothing looked unusual. Dry cleaning, gas, Starbucks. Then I started seeing them. Charges that made my stomach turn. Le Bernardin, $480 Four Seasons Hotel, $650 Cartier, $12,400 Tiffany & Cohen, $8,900 Cheers Le Bernardin. Again, $523 another hotel, $780. The dates. Oh God, the dates. They were all on nights when he'd said he was working late, all in the last 2 months. And the jewelry purchases, I'd received nothing, not a bracelet, not a necklace, nothing. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely scroll through the pages. I grabbed my phone, pulled up my photo gallery. I started screenshotting everything, sending the images to my personal email. Evidence. I needed evidence. That's when I heard it. His voice, Marcus's voice coming from downstairs. He was home at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. I quickly closed the browser, shut the laptop. My heart pounded as I heard his footsteps on the stairs. I stood up just as he appeared in the doorway of his office. Sophia. His eyes went to the laptop, then to me. What are you doing in here? I was looking for the insurance information. For the hospital bill. In my laptop? No, I just moved it to sit down. My back was hurting. We stared at each other. I don't know if he believed me. I don't know if it mattered anymore. Why are you home? I asked. Forgot some files. He moved past me, opened a drawer, grabbed a folder. Then he paused, turned. Sophia, we need to talk. Those 4 words, the 4 words that end everything. Okay, I said slowly. About what? I think. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd always found endearing. Now it just looked practiced. I think maybe we rushed into having a baby. I think maybe we need some space to figure things out. The room tilted. What? I'm under a lot of pressure at work, and you're about to have a baby, and I don't know if I'm ready for this, for fatherhood, for any of it. Marcus, I'm 7 months pregnant. You're going to be a father in 8 weeks, whether you're ready or not. I know that. His voice was cold now, the pretense dropping. Which is why I think it's better if we separate. Just for a while. Give me time to think. Separate. I couldn't breathe. Where would I go? You could stay with your mother or get your own place. I'll pay for it, of course. I'm not abandoning you. I just need space. Your own place? He wanted me out. Out of our home. Out of his life. Is this about Victoria? For fuck's sake, he exploded and I flinched. He'd never yelled at me before. Everything is not about Victoria. This is about me, about what I need. I'm drowning here, Sophia. Drowning in responsibilities I didn't ask for. Didn't ask for? My voice was barely a whisper. We planned this baby. You said you wanted her. I lied. 2 words. That's all it took. 2 words to shatter 3 years of marriage, 8 months of pregnancy, every dream I'd ever had. Get out, I heard myself say. What? Get out. This is still my home too, and I'm not leaving. So you get out. He laughed. Actually laughed. Sophia, my name is on the lease. Mine alone. I can't get out of my own apartment. The lease? How had I not known that? How had I signed nothing, owned nothing? You'll have to force me out then, because I'm not leaving. Fine. He grabbed his folder, headed for the door. But don't expect me to come home tonight, or any night. Figure it out, Sophia. Figure out your life, because you're not part of mine anymore. He left, just like that, and I stood there in his office, 7 months pregnant, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Except that wasn't true. I had one person who'd promised, when he walked me down the aisle 3 years ago, that he'd always be there if I needed him. It was time to make that call. I didn't call Richard Henderson that day. Pride, shame, and shock kept me frozen in that apartment for 3 days. 3 days of Marcus not coming home. 3 days of his phone going straight to voicemail. 3 days of me surviving on crackers and ginger ale because the stress had made my morning sickness return with a vengeance. On the 4th day, a courier arrived with an envelope. Inside was a formal letter from Morrison & Blake's legal department, not even Marcus himself, informing me that I had 30 days to vacate the premises. The apartment lease was solely in Marcus Chen's name, and he was exercising his legal right to terminate my residency. 30 days. With a baby due in 6 weeks, that's when I finally broke. I sat on the floor of our bedroom, his bedroom, surrounded by half-packed boxes, and I sobbed. Huge, ugly, gasping sobs that made my daughter kick frantically inside me, as if she could feel her mother's heart shattering. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop crying. You're upsetting the baby. I stared at the screen, ice flooding my veins. Who? Another text arrived, this time with a photo attachment. I opened it with shaking fingers. It was a picture of me, sitting on the bedroom floor, crying, taken from outside our window. Marcus asked me to check on you. You look pathetic. He was right to leave. Victoria. It had to be Victoria. Who is this? I typed back, even though I knew. Someone who can give him what you never could. A real partner. Not a needy, swollen burden. Leave him alone, Sophia. You've already lost. My hands clenched around the phone. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder, harder. She'd been watching me, photographing me, taunting me while I was at my most vulnerable. I stood up, my back screaming in protest, and walked to the window. I scanned the street below, the building across from us. Where had she been standing? How long had she been watching? Then my phone rang. A real call this time. Richard Henderson's name flashed on the screen. Hello? My voice came out rough, broken from crying. Sophia, my dear girl, I just heard. His voice was warm, concerned, everything I needed in that moment. Patricia ran into Marcus yesterday at some charity event. He told her you two were taking a break. What's going on? I couldn't hold it together. The story came pouring out. The late nights, Victoria, the credit card charges, Marcus throwing me out. All of it. When I finally finished, there was a long silence on the other end. That son of a bitch, Richard said quietly. And my daughter is involved in this? I think they're having an affair, but I can't prove it. You don't need to prove it. I can see it clear as day. Victoria's been different these last few months. Secretive, always on her phone, always running off to the city. Patricia thought she had a new boyfriend, but she wouldn't tell us who. He sighed heavily. I should have guessed. That girl has always had terrible taste in men. Richard, I don't know what to do. I have nowhere to go. My mother's in Florida with her new husband, and we're not close. I don't have friends who can take in a pregnant woman for 6 weeks. I've been looking at shelters, but absolutely not, he cut me off firmly. You are not going to a shelter. You're coming here, to Greenwich, today. I can't impose on you like that. Sophia, you are my goddaughter. When your father died, I promised I would look after you. That promise doesn't expire just because you got married to a bastard who doesn't deserve you. Pack your things. I'm sending a car. You'll be here by evening." I started crying again, but this time from relief. "Thank you. God, Richard, thank you." "One more thing," his voice turned cold. "Don't tell Marcus where you're going. Don't tell anyone. Let him wonder. Let him worry. And Sophia, start documenting everything. Take screenshots of those charges. Save those texts. If Victoria's involved in this, she's going to learn that actions have consequences." The car arrived 2 hours later. A sleek black Mercedes driven by Richard's personal driver, James. He helped me carry my boxes down, while neighbors watched and whispered. I didn't care anymore. Let them gossip. Let them judge. As we pulled away from Tribeca, I looked back at the building one last time. I'd arrived there 3 years ago as a bride, full of hope and dreams. I was leaving it as a pregnant woman, discarded and humiliated, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. The Henderson estate in Greenwich was everything you'd imagine. 12,000 square feet of colonial elegance, manicured lawns, a circular driveway with a fountain. Patricia Henderson was waiting at the door, her face a mix of compassion and barely contained fury. "That girl," she said, embracing me carefully around my enormous belly. "That spoiled, thoughtless girl. Come in, dear. Your room is ready." The room was actually a suite on the second floor. Bedroom, sitting area, private bathroom with a soaking tub. Someone had already stocked it with fresh flowers, pregnancy magazines, and a basket of snacks. "We want you comfortable," Patricia said. "Richard is in his study making some calls. He's very angry with Victoria, and he wants to help you however he can." That night, I had dinner with the Hendersons in their formal dining room. It should have felt awkward. Me, the abandoned pregnant woman, intruding on their perfect life. But they treated me like family. Because to Richard, I was. After dinner, Richard asked me to join him in his study. He closed the door, poured himself a scotch, and sat across from me. "I made some calls today," he said carefully. "Some very discreet calls to people who know things. About Marcus, about his work. And your husband has been playing a dangerous game. The Henderson case he's been working on? It's legitimate. But there's another case, one he's keeping very quiet. He's representing a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands, doing it under the table, not through the firm. I don't have all the details yet, but it smells like money laundering." My stomach dropped. Marcus would absolutely do it for the right price, or for the right person asking." He leaned forward. "Sophia, I think Victoria isn't just having an affair with your husband. I think she's using him. For something. I don't know what yet, but I'm going to find out." Over the next week, while I tried to rest and prepare for my baby's arrival, Richard worked behind the scenes. He had private investigators, forensic accountants, people who could dig into corners most of us didn't know existed. What they found was worse than either of us imagined. Victoria had been dating Marcus for nearly a year, long before I got pregnant. The affair had started at that first firm party where I'd introduced them. They'd been careful, meeting in hotels, using cash when they could. But Marcus had gotten sloppy with those credit cards, and now we had a trail. The jewelry purchases? All for Victoria. The investigators even had photos of her wearing a Cartier necklace that matched one of the charges. But it went deeper, much deeper. Victoria had a gambling problem, a serious one. She'd burned through most of her trust fund at underground poker games and online casinos. She owed money to people, dangerous people, and her parents didn't know. Marcus had been helping her hide it. That shell corporation in the Caymans. It was a way to move money around, to make it look like legitimate business income. They'd been planning to elope, take whatever money they could steal from Victoria's remaining trust, and disappear. There was just one problem with their plan. Me. A wife could make legal claims. A wife could expose everything. A pregnant wife had even more rights, more protections. So Marcus had decided to throw me out, make me look unstable, difficult. Then, after the baby was born, he'd divorce me, claim I was an unfit mother, and take custody. That would free him up to marry Victoria and solve both their problems. "They've been planning this for months," Richard said, showing me the investigator's report. His face was white with rage. "My daughter conspired with your husband to destroy you, to steal from her own family, to abandon her goddaughter when she was most vulnerable." I stared at the papers, at the timeline they'd constructed. Every piece fit. The guest room, the distance, the sudden, "I'm not ready for fatherhood" speech, all of it calculated. There's more, Richard said quietly. Victoria knows you're here. She figured it out, and she's planning something. The investigators picked up communications between her and Marcus. They're coming here, Sophia, to my house, tomorrow. Why? To humiliate you, to force a confrontation in front of Patricia and me, to make you look hysterical and unstable. They think if they push you hard enough, you'll have a breakdown. Medical records of a pregnant woman having a psychiatric crisis would be very useful in a custody battle. The cruelty of it took my breath away. They want me to lose my daughter. They want a lot of things, but they're not going to get them. Richard stood up, his voice taking on the steel of a man who'd spent decades in politics. Tomorrow, when they arrive, we're going to be ready. I've got my own lawyers coming, I've got documents prepared. And when Victoria walks through that door, she's going to learn that she picked the wrong woman to destroy. That night, I lay awake in my beautiful guest room, my daughter doing somersaults inside me. I thought about calling Marcus, warning him, asking him to please just let me go peacefully. But then I remembered those texts from Victoria, the photo of me crying on the floor, the word pathetic. No, I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to warn them. I was going to let them walk right into the trap Richard was setting, and I was going to watch their perfect plan burn to ashes. They arrived at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, just as Richard said they would. Patricia and I were having tea in the sunroom when we heard the doorbell. James went to answer it, and moments later, Victoria's voice rang through the house. Mother, Father, we need to talk. Now. Patricia's hand tightened around her teacup. Show time, she murmured to me. Remember what Richard said? Stay calm. Don't engage. We heard footsteps approaching. Victoria appeared in the doorway looking like she'd stepped out of Vogue. White cashmere sweater, designer jeans, perfect makeup. Behind her stood Marcus, also dressed to impress in slacks and a blazer. Victoria's eyes landed on me, and her expression shifted from confidence to fury. What is she doing here? Patricia set down her teacup with deliberate precision. Sophia is our guest. A better question is, what are you doing here, Victoria? I wasn't aware we were expecting you. I came to talk sense into you before this parasite. She gestured at me. Poisons you against your own daughter. Parasite? Patricia's voice could have frozen fire. You call your father's goddaughter, a woman 7 months pregnant and homeless because of your behavior, a parasite? My behavior, Victoria laughed, shrill and defensive. Mother, Marcus and I are in love, real love, not whatever pathetic arrangement he had with her. He made a mistake marrying someone so beneath him, and now he's correcting it. Marcus stood behind her, saying nothing. Not defending me, not defending our marriage, just standing there like a coward. Is that what you told him? I asked quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. That I'm beneath him? Is that how you convinced him to throw away 3 years of marriage? Victoria's smile was cruel. I didn't have to convince him of anything. He came to me. He told me you were boring, clingy, desperate, that sleeping with you was like sleeping with a dead fish. His words, not mine. The words were designed to wound, and they did. But I didn't let it show. Instead, I pulled out my phone, the one I'd been recording this entire conversation on, with Richard's explicit instructions. How interesting, I said. Because 6 months ago, Marcus told me I was the love of his life. 3 months ago, he said our baby was the best thing that ever happened to us. Funny how things change. Things change when someone better comes along, Victoria shot back. Face reality, Sophia. You lost. Marcus is mine now. And once you have that baby, he's going to divorce you, take custody, and you'll be left with nothing, just like you deserve. Take custody. Patricia stood up, her voice shaking with rage. Victoria Charlotte Henderson, do you hear yourself? You're talking about stealing a child from her mother. I'm talking about a child being raised in a proper home, with proper parents, not by some nobody editor who can barely afford her own apartment. That's when Richard walked in. He must have been listening from the hallway, waiting for the right moment. His face was a mask of cold fury. You're right about one thing, Victoria, he said quietly. Things are about to change, just not the way you think. Victoria's confidence faltered. Daddy, don't. He held up his hand. Don't call me that. Not after what you've done. Not after what I've learned. He turned to Marcus. Mr. Chen, I assume you know why you're here. Marcus straightened his spine, trying to look confident. Sir, I know this looks bad, but Victoria and I care for each other. What Sophia and I had is over. We're going to handle the divorce amicably and... Amicably? Richard's laugh was bitter. Is that what you call throwing your pregnant wife out of her home with 30 days' notice? Is that what you call planning to paint her as an unfit mother so you can take her child? Marcus went pale. I don't know what she's told you, but she didn't have to tell me anything. I had you investigated. Both of you. Richard pulled out a folder from his jacket. I know about the Shell Corporation. I know about the money you're moving through the Caymans. I know about Victoria's gambling debts. I know everything. The room went silent. Victoria's face drained of color. You can't, she started. I can, and I did. You're my daughter, Victoria, but you're also an adult who made adult choices. Choices that include fraud, conspiracy, and alienation of affection. As of this morning, your trust fund is frozen. Every account in your name is locked pending investigation. Your credit cards are canceled. You can't do that, Victoria shrieked. That's my money. That's Henderson family money, held in trust for you, a trust I control, and I'm exercising my authority as trustee to protect those assets from your criminal behavior. Marcus grabbed Victoria's arm. We need to leave, now. You're not going anywhere, Richard said. The police are already on their way. I filed a complaint about the financial irregularities. They'll want to ask you some questions. That's when Victoria lost it completely. She lunged at me, her perfectly manicured nails reaching for my face. This is all your fault. You ruined everything. Patricia and Richard both moved to stop her, but they didn't have to. Because at that exact moment, I felt it. A massive contraction. Different from the Braxton Hicks I'd been having. This one was real. And then the unmistakable warmth of my water breaking, fluid gushing down my legs, pooling on Patricia Henderson's antique Persian rug. Victoria jumped back, horrified. Marcus just stared. Oh my God, Patricia gasped. Richard, call an ambulance. Now! Another contraction hit, doubling me over. I grabbed the arm of a chair, trying to breathe through it. The pain was enormous, all-consuming. It's too soon, I gasped. She's not due for 6 more weeks. Stress, Patricia said, her voice taking on the efficient tone of a woman who'd been through this 3 times herself. Victoria, get out of my sight. Marcus, you should probably leave too, unless you want to be here when the police arrive. But Marcus didn't move. He stared at me, hunched over in pain, water and blood now staining my clothes. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw something in his face that might have been regret. Sophia, he started. Don't, I cut him off, gasping through another contraction. Don't you dare say my name. Don't you dare pretend you care. The ambulance sirens were already wailing in the distance. Richard had his arm around me, helping me toward the door. Patricia was grabbing my overnight bag, the one I'd packed weeks ago that had been sitting by my door just in case. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I looked back at the Henderson mansion. Victoria was screaming at her parents, gesticulating wildly. Marcus stood apart from all of them, looking lost and small. The paramedic placed an oxygen mask over my face. Try to breathe steadily, she said. Your baby's heartbeat is strong. You're going to be okay. But as another contraction ripped through me, I knew that okay was relative. My daughter was coming 6 weeks early because of the stress they'd put me through. My marriage was destroyed. My entire life had exploded. And yet, as the ambulance pulled away, sirens blaring, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope, because I was finally free, and whatever happened next, I would face it on my own terms. Not as Marcus Chen's discarded wife, not as Victoria Henderson's victim, but as Sophia Bradford, mother, survivor, fighter. And I was done playing nice. The hospital room was sterile and cold, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out and unreal. I'd been in labor for 14 hours. 14 hours of pain that felt like my body was being torn apart from the inside. The contractions came in relentless waves, each one stronger than the last. Dr. Sarah Mendez, the attending OB-GYN, checked my vitals for what felt like the 100th time. Her face was calm but concerned. You're at 7 centimeters, Sophia. We're almost there. But your blood pressure is elevated. I need you to try to stay calm. Stay calm. As if that were possible when my entire world was collapsing around me. Patricia Henderson sat in the chair beside my bed, holding my hand through each contraction. She'd refused to leave, even when the nurses suggested she might want to rest. I'm not going anywhere, she'd said firmly. This girl has no one else, and she's family. Richard had stayed too, pacing the hallway outside, making phone calls. Every so often he'd poke his head in to check on me, his face tight with worry. This wasn't how he'd imagined his goddaughter's first child being born. In crisis, alone, 6 weeks premature because of stress and betrayal. Has anyone heard from Marcus? I asked between contractions, hating myself for even caring. Patricia's lips thinned. James saw him leaving the estate with Victoria about an hour after the ambulance took you. They drove off together. I don't think he's coming, sweetheart. The words should have hurt. They should have broken me. But I was beyond that now. The pain in my body was so overwhelming that the pain in my heart seemed almost distant, almost manageable. Another contraction hit, this one so powerful I screamed. Dr. Mendez checked me again. You're at 9 centimeters. It won't be long now. She paused, then added gently. Sophia, I need to know. Is the father going to be present? We need to update our records. No, I gasped. No, father. Just me. The doctor nodded without judgment. She'd probably seen it all before. Women giving birth alone, abandoned, betrayed. I was just another statistic. But I wasn't going to stay that way. At 3:47 a.m., after 15 hours of labor, my daughter entered the world. She was tiny, only 4 pounds, 13 ounces, but her lungs were strong. Her cry filled the room, fierce and defiant, and when they placed her on my chest, still wet and warm, I felt something inside me shift. This was it. This was what mattered. Not Marcus, not Victoria, not the shattered remains of my marriage. This tiny, perfect human being was my future, and I would protect her with everything I had. She's beautiful, Patricia whispered, tears streaming down her face. Absolutely beautiful. Have you chosen a name? Grace, I said, looking down at my daughter's scrunched-up face. Grace Elizabeth Bradford. Bradford. My maiden name, not Chen. Never Chen. Grace Elizabeth, Patricia repeated. It's perfect. They took Grace to the NICU, standard procedure for premature babies, while the nurses cleaned me up and moved me to a recovery room. Exhaustion crashed over me like a tidal wave. I'd been awake for over 30 hours, and my body felt like it had been hit by a truck. But my mind was clear, crystal clear, and angry. Richard appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted, but trying to smile. Congratulations, my dear. She's magnificent. Thank you for being here, I said, my voice hoarse. Both of you. I don't know what I would have done without you. You're family, Sophia. You always have been. He sat down carefully on the edge of the bed. Now, I know you're exhausted, but we need to talk about what happens next. Marcus and Victoria disappeared last night. My investigators tracked them to a hotel in Manhattan. They're still together? Of course they were. The police? I asked. They want to interview both of them about the financial irregularities. But Marcus is a lawyer. He knows how to stall. And Victoria has expensive attorneys on retainer. This could drag out for months. I don't have months, I said flatly. I have a premature baby in the NICU who's going to need round-the-clock care when she comes home. I have no apartment, no income. I'm on unpaid maternity leave. I have nothing. You have us, Patricia interjected. Sophia, you and Grace can stay at the estate as long as you need. Years, if necessary. The offer was generous. Too generous. I can't accept that. You've already done so much. You can, and you will, Richard said firmly. At least until you're back on your feet. But in the meantime, we need to go on the offensive, legally speaking. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then handed it to me. It was a text message thread between Marcus and Victoria, obtained by Richard's investigators. I started reading, and my blood turned to ice. Marcus. She actually believed that I'm not ready for fatherhood speech. God, she's so naive. Victoria. I told you she would. She's desperate to believe you still love her. It's pathetic. Marcus. Once the baby's born, we move fast. I file for divorce, cite her emotional instability during pregnancy. I've got documentation from our couples therapist. Victoria. We never went to couples therapy. Marcus. No, but she doesn't know I've been seeing Dr. Brennan alone, telling him how worried I am about her mental state. He'll testify that I expressed concerns about her ability to care for a child. It's all about building the narrative. Victoria. You're brilliant, and once you have custody, we can get married. My father will come around eventually. They always do. Marcus. What about the money situation? Victoria. Don't worry about it. Once I get my trust fund freed up, we'll have more than enough. And if my father doesn't cooperate, there are other ways to access family money. I know where Mother keeps her jewelry. I know the codes to the safe. We'll take what we need and disappear if we have to. Marcus. I love you. Victoria. I love you too. This time next year, Sophia will be a distant memory and will be in the Maldives. I read it twice, 3 times. Each word was a knife, but I didn't cry. I was done crying. He's been planning this for months, I said quietly. The therapist, the documentation, all of it. He's been building a case to paint me as unstable so he can take Grace. That's exactly what he's been doing, Richard agreed. But now we have proof of his intentions. Proof that he's been manufacturing evidence. That text thread alone would destroy his credibility in any custody hearing. It's not enough, I said. I need more. I need to destroy him so completely that he can never come near my daughter again. Richard and Patricia exchanged a look. Then Richard smiled, a cold, calculating smile that reminded me why he'd been so successful in politics. I was hoping you'd say that, because I have a plan, but it's going to require you to do something very difficult. What? You're going to have to see Marcus again. Talk to him, record him, get him to say everything about the therapist, about his plans for Grace, about Victoria, everything. My stomach turned. I can't face him. Not after everything. You can, Patricia said gently, because you're stronger than you think, and because your daughter deserves a mother who fights for her. She was right. Of course she was right. How do we do this? I asked. Over the next hour, Richard laid out the plan. It was risky, maybe even dangerous, but it was also the only way to ensure that Marcus could never take Grace from me. I would reach out to Marcus, tell him I wanted to talk, that I was willing to discuss custody arrangements, willing to be reasonable. I would wear a wire, record everything, get him to confess to his manipulation, his conspiracy with Victoria, his plan to steal my child. He'll never agree to meet with me, I said. He knows I'm angry. He'll be suspicious. That's why you're going to appeal to his ego, Richard said. You're going to tell him you've realized you were wrong, that you understand why he left, that you want to work together to give Grace the best life possible. Men like Marcus can't resist the opportunity to be magnanimous, to be the hero of their own story. It made me sick, but he was right. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. Grace had to stay in the NICU for at least another week. Her lungs needed more time to develop, but she was stable, strong, fighting, just like her mother. I sent Marcus a text message from my hospital bed. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but we need to talk. About Grace, about what happens next. I don't want to fight Marcus. I just want to do what's right for our daughter. Can we meet? Please? He responded within 10 minutes. Of course, I never wanted to fight either. Coffee tomorrow. The Bluestone Cafe in Tribeca. 2 p.m. The Bluestone Cafe. The place where he'd proposed to me 4 years ago. The cruelty was almost poetic. See you there, I replied. Richard's investigator fitted me with a wire the next morning. It was tiny, sophisticated, virtually undetectable. Just keep him talking, the investigator said. The more he says, the better. Patricia drove me into the city. My body still ached from giving birth, and I'd only slept a few hours over the past 3 days. But I forced myself to shower, do my makeup, dress in clothes that didn't look like I'd been through hell. I needed to look vulnerable but not broken, weak but not defeated. The perfect victim for Marcus to manipulate one last time. The Bluestone Cafe was exactly as I remembered it. Exposed brick, mismatched vintage furniture, the smell of expensive coffee. Marcus was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking annoyingly handsome in a gray sweater and jeans. He stood when he saw me, his face arranging itself into an expression of concern. Sophia, thank you for coming. How are you feeling? Tired, I said honestly, sitting down across from him. Sore. Worried about Grace. How is she? I tried calling the hospital, but they wouldn't give me any information. She's stable, in the NICU. She'll be there for at least another week. I paused. Don't you think you should have been at the hospital, Marcus, for your daughter's birth? Something flickered across his face, guilt, annoyance, but he smoothed it away. I wanted to be there, Soph, but after everything that happened at the Hendersons, I didn't think you'd want me there, and honestly, I thought it would be less stressful for you if I stayed away. Less stressful, as if his absence had been a kindness. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you, I said, folding my hands on the table. The wire under my shirt felt like it was burning into my skin. I've been thinking a lot over the past few days, about us, about what went wrong. Sophia, let me finish, please. I took a breath. I think maybe you were right, about needing space, about the pregnancy being rushed. I was so focused on building this perfect family that I didn't stop to think about what you needed, about whether you were ready. I could see him relaxing, his shoulders dropping. This was the narrative he wanted, the one where I took the blame. I appreciate you saying that, he said carefully. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt trapped, like my whole life had been decided for me and I didn't get a say. I understand that now, and I want you to know that I'm not going to make this difficult. The divorce, I mean. I'm willing to be reasonable about everything. Really? He leaned forward, interested now. Because I was worried you'd try to take me for everything. That's what Victoria said you'd do. There it was, Victoria's name, the first crack in his facade. Is that what Victoria thinks of me? I asked softly. That I'm vindictive? Marcus had the grace to look uncomfortable. She doesn't really know you. She worries that you'll try to use Grace as a weapon, to hurt me. Is that what you think I'd do? I don't know what to think anymore, Soph. You were so angry at the Hendersons' house, and Richard froze Victoria's accounts. He's trying to destroy her because she had the audacity to fall in love with me. My hands clenched under the table, but I kept my voice calm. Richard froze her accounts because she helped you plan to take my daughter away from me, because you two were conspiring to paint me as an unfit mother. Marcus's eyes widened. That's not. Who told you that? Does it matter? Is it true? He was quiet for a long moment, then quietly. Victoria and I talked about custody arrangements. Yes, we thought Grace might be better off in a more stable environment, with two parents who actually want to be together. You mean you thought Grace would be better off without me? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I leaned forward. Marcus, be honest with me. For once in your life, just be honest. Were you planning to divorce me and fight for full custody of Grace? He looked at me, and I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was weighing his options, trying to decide how much to admit. I was considering it, he finally said. For Grace's sake, because I genuinely believe she deserves better than what you can give her right now. Because I'm broke? Because I'm living with the Hendersons? Because you're emotionally unstable, he said. And there it was, the accusation he'd been building toward. Sophia, you need help, professional help. Dr. Brennan and I have discussed your mental state extensively. Dr. Brennan, the therapist you told me you stopped seeing 6 months ago. He froze. That's not... You've been seeing him behind my back, building a case, telling him I'm unstable so you'd have an expert witness in a custody hearing. Isn't that right? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I stood up, my whole body shaking with rage. I understand that you're a manipulative bastard who planned every bit of this, who gaslit me for months, who threw me out when I was 7 months pregnant, who missed his daughter's birth because he was too busy fucking Victoria Henderson. People at nearby tables were staring now. Marcus's face went red. Lower your voice, he hissed. You're making a scene. This is exactly the kind of behavior. The kind of behavior that proves I'm unstable. I laughed bitterly. That's the narrative, right? Hysterical pregnant woman. Emotional. Can't be trusted with a child. You're twisting everything? Am I? Then explain the text, Marcus. The ones where you and Victoria discussed how naive I am. How pathetic. How you were going to take Grace from me and disappear to the Maldives. His face went white. How did you? It doesn't matter how I got them. What matters is that I have them. All of them. Every scheming, cruel, calculated message between you and your mistress. Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell over. You had me investigated. You've been recording this conversation, haven't you? Jesus Christ, Sophia. Yes, I said simply. I have. Every word. Including the part where you just admitted to conspiring with a therapist to manufacture evidence of my mental instability. He looked around wildly, like he was searching for an escape route. This is entrapment. It won't hold up in court. Want to bet? Richard Henderson has lawyers who could argue a case before the Supreme Court, and they're very, very interested in what you and his daughter have been planning. You vindictive bitch, Marcus spat. I should have known you'd pull something like this. You can't just accept that I don't love you anymore, that I chose someone better. Someone better? I stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see the tears I was no longer bothering to hide. Marcus, I loved you. I gave you everything. And you didn't just leave me. You tried to destroy me. You tried to take my child. What kind of monster does that? The kind who's protecting his daughter from a mother who can't even support herself, he shot back. You think Richard and Patricia are going to let you live with them forever? You think they won't get tired of the sad, broken woman and her bastard baby? The word bastard hung in the air like poison. Her name is Grace, I said quietly. And she's not a bastard. She's your daughter, your flesh and blood. And you just called her a name that proves you don't deserve her. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Marcus calling my name, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Outside, Patricia was waiting in the car. I climbed in, pulled off the wire, and started shaking. Did you get it? I asked. Patricia nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Every word! Richard's lawyers are going to have a field day with this. As we drove away from the Bluestone Cafe, I looked back one more time. Marcus was standing on the sidewalk, his phone pressed to his ear, probably calling Victoria, probably panicking. Good. Let him panic. Let them both panic. Because the trap was set, and they'd walked right into it. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of feeding schedules and lawyers' meetings. Grace came home from the NICU on a Wednesday, still tiny but thriving. The Hendersons had transformed one of their guest rooms into a nursery. Pale yellow walls, a white crib, more baby supplies than I could have afforded in 5 years. Every time I looked at my daughter, I felt that fierce, protective love that mothers talk about. But I also felt rage. Rage at Marcus for everything he'd tried to take from us. Rage at Victoria for her casual cruelty. And I wanted justice. Richard's legal team was led by a woman named Janet Morrison, a divorce attorney so formidable that other lawyers crossed the street to avoid her. She'd listened to the recording from the cafe, read through all the texts between Marcus and Victoria, and smiled like a shark. We're going to bury him, she'd said simply. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. We would file for divorce with a petition for full custody and a restraining order against Marcus. We would submit all the evidence, the texts, the recording, the financial records showing Marcus's affair spending. We would subpoena Dr. Brennan and force him to admit that Marcus had been manufacturing evidence. But that wasn't enough. Not for me. Not after everything. I want them exposed, I told Richard one evening. We were in his study, Grace asleep in my arms. Not just in court. I want everyone to know what they did. What they are. Richard studied me carefully. You understand what that means? Once this goes public, there's no taking it back. Your private life, your marriage, everything will be dissected. I don't care. They made me feel like I was crazy, like I was the problem. How many other women has Marcus done this to? How many will he do it to in the future if someone doesn't stop him? And Victoria, Patricia added from her spot by the fireplace. That girl has been enabled her entire life. Someone needs to show her that actions have consequences. Richard nodded slowly. All right. But we do this my way. Strategically, we use every connection, every resource, and we time it perfectly. The opportunity came faster than we expected. Morrison and Blake was holding their annual charity gala in 3 weeks, a massive fundraiser for legal aid, services, attended by every lawyer, judge, and legal professional in New York. Marcus would be there. He'd have to be. Missing it would look suspicious, would suggest he had something to hide. Victoria would be there too. Richard was on the events board, and Patricia had purchased a table. They always attended. We're going to make it the social event of the season, Richard said. For all the wrong reasons. The day of the gala, I felt like I was preparing for battle. Patricia had taken me shopping, insisting I needed something that would make Marcus's jaw drop. We'd found it, a midnight blue gown that somehow made me look elegant rather than like a woman who'd given birth 3 weeks ago. My body wasn't what it used to be. I had stretch marks, softer curves, breasts swollen with milk. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see someone broken. I saw a mother, a warrior. Grace was with a nurse Richard had hired, a kind Jamaican woman named Claudette, who had 20 years of experience with newborns. I'd fed Grace, kissed her downy head, and promised I'd be home soon. Go show them who you are, Claudette had said, smiling. The gala was held at the Plaza Hotel in the grand ballroom that had seen 100 years of New York society events. Crystal chandeliers, gilt mirrors, tables draped in white linen. A string quartet played in the corner, while lawyers in tuxedos and gowns worth more than my car sipped champagne and talked about cases. I walked in on Richard's arm, Patricia on his other side. We made quite the entrance, the powerful senator and his elegant wife, with their goddaughter who'd been the subject of so much whispered gossip. I felt eyes on me immediately. The whispers started. There's Marcus Chen's wife, the one he left when she was pregnant. Poor thing. She's staying with the Hendersons now. Such a scandal. Let them whisper. They hadn't heard anything yet. Marcus was across the room, standing with a group of senior partners. He looked good, of course he did. Expensive tuxedo, hair perfectly styled, that confident smile that had once made my heart flutter. When he saw me, the smile faltered. Beside him stood Victoria. She wore red, a bold choice, aggressive, and her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant chignon. When our eyes met, she smirked, lifted her champagne glass in a mocking toast. "Steady," Richard murmured. "Remember the plan." We made our way to our table. Janet Morrison was already there, along with Richard's investigators and several other key players in what was about to unfold. The night's program was projected on screens around the room: cocktails, dinner, speeches from the board, an auction. What wasn't on the program was the surprise presentation. During dinner, Richard excused himself to talk to the event organizers. I saw him speaking with the AV team, saw them nodding, setting something up. My heart started to pound. The speeches began after dessert. The president of Morrison and Blake went first, talking about the firm's commitment to justice and giving back to the community. Several board members followed, each droning on about legal aid and pro bono work. Then Richard took the stage. "Good evening," he said, his voice commanding immediate attention. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight and for your generous support of such a worthy cause. Legal aid is essential to ensuring that everyone, regardless of means, has access to justice." He paused, letting that word, justice, hang in the air. "Tonight, I want to tell you a story about justice, about why it matters, about what happens when those who are supposed to uphold the law instead manipulate it for their own gain." The room went quiet. I saw Marcus stiffen, saw Victoria lean forward. "3 months ago, my goddaughter, a woman I've known since she was born, a woman I walked down the aisle when her own father couldn't be there, came to me in crisis. She was 7 months pregnant. Her husband, a rising attorney at Morrison and Blake, had thrown her out of their home, changed the locks, moved his mistress in, told her he wasn't ready for fatherhood." Gasps around the room, heads turning, people trying to figure out who Richard was talking about, then eyes landing on me, on Marcus. "My goddaughter went into premature labor from the stress. She gave birth alone, 6 weeks early, while her husband was at a hotel with his mistress, planning how to take custody of their daughter. How to paint this woman, a successful editor, a devoted wife, as mentally unstable so he could steal her child." Marcus stood up. "This is completely inappropriate." "Sit down, Mr. Chen," Richard's voice was steel. "I'm not finished." Security guards appeared at the exits. Richard had planned for this. "The mistress, by the way, is my own daughter, Victoria Henderson, who many of you know, who used her relationship with Mr. Chen to steal from our family, to gamble away her trust fund, to conspire in financial fraud." Victoria had gone white. She tried to stand, but Patricia put a hand on her arm, holding her in place. "Now, some of you might think this is just a family matter, a personal drama that has no place at a legal gala. But you'd be wrong, because Mr. Chen didn't just betray his wife. He suborned a therapist to create false documentation. He manufactured evidence of mental instability. He conspired to deny a mother custody of her child based on lies." Richard nodded to the AV team. The screens around the room lit up with text messages. Marcus and Victoria's entire thread, blown up for everyone to read. She actually believed the "I'm not ready for fatherhood" speech. God, she's so naive. I told you she would. She's desperate to believe you still love her. It's pathetic. The room erupted. People talking, pointing, reading. Marcus's face had gone from red to white to greenish. He started pushing his way toward the exit, but the security guards blocked him. "And finally," Richard said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "I want you to hear something. This is a recording from 2 weeks ago. Mr. Chen agreed to meet with my goddaughter to discuss custody. What he didn't know is that she was recording the conversation. Listen carefully to what one of Morrison and Blake's most promising young attorneys says about the mother of his child." The audio played. Crystal clear, Marcus's voice admitting everything: the conspiracy with the therapist, the plan to take Grace, calling my daughter a bastard. When it finished, the silence was deafening. The managing partner of Morrison and Blake stood up, his face purple with rage. "Marcus Chen, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security, escort him out. And someone call the New York State Bar Association. This man is going to be disbarred." Marcus was being physically removed from the ballroom now, still protesting, still trying to explain. Victoria tried to follow him, but Richard blocked her path. "Not so fast. We're not done with you." Richard's investigators stepped forward, along with 2 NYPD detectives. "Victoria Henderson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and theft. You have the right to remain silent." I watched as they handcuffed her, as they led her away while she screamed about lawyers and lawsuits and how dare they humiliate her like this. The ballroom was chaos. People crowding around me, asking if I was okay, expressing outrage on my behalf. Reporters, someone must have tipped off the press, snapping photos, recording video. Janet Morrison appeared at my elbow. "That," she said with satisfaction, "is how you destroy someone's credibility." I couldn't speak. I just watched as Marcus and Victoria were both removed from the building, their reputations in ashes, their conspiracy exposed to everyone who mattered. Richard came down from the stage and pulled me into a hug. "It's over, sweetheart. It's finally over." But it wasn't. Not quite. Because as satisfying as this public humiliation was, there was still a legal battle ahead. Divorce proceedings, custody hearings, criminal trials. The war wasn't over. We'd just won the first major battle, and I was ready for whatever came next. The video from the gala went viral within hours. Someone had recorded Richard's entire speech and the audio of Marcus's confession, posting it to Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. By morning, Justice for Sophia was trending. Legal blogs were dissecting Marcus's ethical violations. Think pieces appeared about powerful men who manipulate therapy records and weaponize custody battles. Morrison and Blake released a statement condemning Marcus's actions and announcing a full internal review of his cases. The New York State Bar Association opened an investigation. Dr. Brennan's license was suspended, pending inquiry into whether he'd knowingly participated in manufacturing evidence. Victoria made bail, but the damage was done. Her arrest photo, blonde hair, disheveled, mascara running, handcuffs visible, was on the front page of the Post. Senator's daughter arrested in custody conspiracy. Marcus tried to do damage control, hiring a crisis management firm and releasing a statement claiming he'd been misunderstood and that the recording was taken out of context. But you can't take bastard baby out of context. You can't spin away calling your wife pathetic in text messages. 3 days after the gala, Janet Morrison called with news. "Marcus wants to settle, full custody to you, no visitation rights unless you approve them, and he'll pay child support plus a lump sum settlement. He'll sign away all parental rights if you want." "How much?" I asked. $250,000, plus $1,500 a month in child support until Grace turns 18. It was more money than I'd ever had. Enough for a down payment on a house, enough to rebuild my life. But it felt hollow somehow, like I was selling my daughter's father. "He doesn't deserve to be her father," I said. "He called her a bastard. He tried to take her from me. Why would I ever let him near her?" "You wouldn't," Janet agreed. "But legally, it's cleaner if he voluntarily terminates his parental rights. No future custody battles, no leverage. He's gone from your life completely." I thought about Grace, sleeping peacefully in her nursery, about the life I wanted to give her, a life without this poison, without Marcus's manipulation and Victoria's cruelty. "Tell him we have a deal, but I want it in writing that he never contacts me or Grace again. Ever. If he violates that, he pays a penalty of $1 million. Done." The divorce was finalized in 6 weeks. I never saw Marcus again. He signed the papers, his lawyer delivered the check, and Marcus Chen disappeared from my life as completely as if he'd never existed. Victoria wasn't so lucky. The fraud charges stuck. Between the gambling debts, the money she'd stolen from her parents, and the conspiracy with Marcus, the prosecutors had an airtight case. She pled guilty to avoid trial and got 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and had to pay full restitution to her family. Richard and Patricia were devastated, but resolute. "She made her choices," Patricia said sadly, "and now she has to live with them." Victoria moved to California after her sentencing. I heard through Richard that she was working as a hostess at a restaurant, living in a studio apartment, her trust fund permanently dissolved. The girl who'd once had everything had lost it all. I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even joy at her downfall. But mostly I just felt tired and ready to move forward. 6 months after the gala, I stood in the living room of my new townhouse in Brooklyn. It wasn't huge, 2 bedrooms, small yard, but it was mine, bought with the settlement money, filled with furniture I'd chosen, painted in colors I loved. Grace was sitting in her bouncer, babbling happily at the mobile above her head. She'd grown so much, 12 pounds now, with chubby cheeks and my dark hair. When she smiled, my entire world lit up. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sarah, my former colleague from Whitmore Publishing, holding a bottle of champagne and a gift bag. "Housewarming present," she announced, sweeping in. "Oh my God, Sophia, this place is gorgeous." We'd reconnected after the gala, after she'd seen the videos online and called me immediately. "I always knew Marcus was an asshole," she'd said. "I just didn't know he was a sociopath." Sarah had become my closest friend during the divorce, the person who brought me coffee at 2 a.m. when Grace wouldn't sleep, who made me laugh when everything felt hopeless. "How's the job hunt going?" she asked, settling on my couch with Grace in her lap. "I have a second interview at Penguin Random House next week. Senior editor position, better pay than Whitmore." "You're going to kill it. Everyone in publishing has seen what you went through. You're basically a folk hero now." I laughed, but it was true. The publicity from the gala had been a double-edged sword, invasive and exhausting, but also validating. Women reached out constantly, sharing their own stories of manipulation and custody battles. I'd become an accidental advocate for mothers' rights. "Have you heard from Marcus?" Sarah asked carefully. "No, and I never will. That's the whole point." I took Grace from her arms, kissed her soft head. He doesn't get to be part of our story anymore. Janet Morrison had done one final thing for me. She'd filed a lawsuit against Marcus for intentional infliction of emotional distress. It was pending, but she thought we'd win. Calling his newborn daughter a bastard in a recorded conversation, that's basically a gift to plaintiffs' attorneys. The lawsuit wasn't about money. It was about the principle, about making sure Marcus understood that his actions had consequences that would follow him for years. If this story is making your blood boil like mine was, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, the revenge gets so much better. Your support means everything to this channel. A year after Grace's birth, my life looked nothing like I'd imagined it would. I'd gotten the job at Penguin Random House. My townhouse had become a home, filled with Grace's toys and laughter. Richard and Patricia visited every Sunday for brunch, doting on their honorary granddaughter. Marcus had been disbarred. He'd moved to Chicago, working as a legal consultant, the only job he could get without a license. I didn't follow his life, but Richard's investigators kept tabs just in case. Victoria had violated her probation by leaving California without permission and was serving 6 months in county jail. I felt nothing when I heard. Not satisfaction, not pity, just nothing. The lawsuit against Marcus had settled. Another $100,000, plus a public apology that his lawyer had drafted. It was weak and meaningless, but having it in writing mattered. One evening, as I was putting Grace to bed, she grabbed my finger with her tiny hand and smiled. "Mama," she said. Her first word. I cried. Happy tears this time, because this perfect, beautiful child was mine. All mine, and no one could take her from me. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there with men who seemed kind and stable. I wasn't in a hurry. Grace and I were happy, just the two of us. But I'd also learned something important. I didn't need a partner to be complete. I didn't need someone else to validate my worth. I'd rebuilt my life from scratch, and I'd done it alone. Well, not entirely alone. I had Richard and Patricia. I had Sarah. I had Claudette, who'd become Grace's nanny and my dear friend. I had a community of women who'd reached out after seeing my story, who'd shared their own battles and victories. I was stronger than I'd ever been, more confident, more sure of who I was. Marcus had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd forged me into something harder, something unbreakable. I never spoke to Marcus again. But if I could, here's what I would say. Thank you for showing me exactly who you were. Thank you for being so cruel that I had no choice but to walk away, because staying would have killed something essential in me, my self-respect, my strength, my ability to teach our daughter what she deserves. You thought I was weak, that I'd crumble without you. You were wrong. You thought you could take Grace from me. You were wrong about that too. Every night, when I put our daughter to bed, I tell her she's loved, that she's worthy, that she never has to settle for someone who makes her feel small. I'm teaching her the lessons I had to learn the hard way. You'll never know her. You'll never watch her take her first steps, hear her first words, see her graduate or get married or become whatever amazing person she's going to be. You gave all of that up for Victoria Henderson and your own cowardice. I hope it was worth it. I'm living my best life now. I have a career I love, a daughter who is my entire world, and a future full of possibilities. You have regret, shame, and the knowledge that you destroyed the best thing that ever happened to you. We're done, Marcus. You don't get any more of my energy, my anger, or my tears. You're just a cautionary tale I'll tell Grace someday about why we should never ignore red flags. Thank you for failing me so completely that I had no choice but to save myself. Goodbye. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story gave you the justice you needed to see, check out the other videos on screen. They're just as satisfying. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? See you in the next story.